John Miller stood by the large window of the Galactic Council chamber, his hands clasped behind his back. Earth's ambassador was a patient man, but today his patience was wearing thin. For the third time this month, the Council had dismissed Earth's request for protection of its outer colonies. "Ambassador Miller, we have reviewed your petition and find no merit to your concerns," said Zorthak, the tall, blue-skinned representative of the Xarian Empire. "The Muldarian vessels near your Proxima Centauri settlement are merely scientific in nature." John took a deep breath. "With respect, Representative, our intelligence suggests otherwise. We have recorded weapons signatures from those ships. They are not there for science." The chamber filled with a sound that John had come to recognize as alien laughter. It was not a pleasant sound. "And what would humans know of weapons signatures?" asked Zorthak, his four eyes blinking in sequence. "Your species has spent the last 50 years since first contact doing everything possible to avoid conflict. Your diplomats request talks at the first sign of trouble. Your ships retreat when challenged." The other council members nodded in agreement. The Galactic Council represented 37 spacefaring civilizations, all of which had been fighting wars among the stars long before humans had invented the wheel. "Humans are afraid of fight," Zorthak declared, using the imperfect English that had become the standard language of the Council due to Earth's extensive media broadcasts across the galaxy. "This is known." John wanted to explain that humans weren't afraid of fighting. They were trying to be better than their bloody history. But he had his orders. "We simply prefer peaceful solutions," he said instead. Later that day, John sent his report back to Earth through the quantum communication array. In the Lunar Command Center, Admiral Susan Taylor read it with a grim expression. "They're still not taking us seriously," she said to General Alan Pierce, who stood beside her chair. Alan nodded. "Maybe that's for the best. Strategic advantage and all that." "For how long?" Susan asked. "The Muldarians are getting bolder. They've moved 3 more battle cruisers into the Proxima system." The two officers looked at the large display showing Earth's secret military assets. After first contact with alien life, Earth's nations had united under the threat of possible invasion. While publicly promoting peace and diplomacy, they had secretly built a military force unlike anything humans had created before. "The President wants to maintain our current stance," Alan said. "Keep playing the peaceful species while we finish the Thunderbolt weapon systems." Susan stood up and walked to the window. From the moon, Earth looked peaceful, a blue marble hanging in the darkness. "The colonists on Proxima are sitting ducks," she said. "How many need to die before we show our real face to the galaxy?" Alan joined her at the window. "The President has authorized the deployment of special forces to Proxima. Sam Wells and his team left yesterday, disguised as agricultural specialists." "That's 20 people, Alan, against 3 Muldarian battle cruisers." "20 of our best people," Alan corrected. "And they're just there to buy time. The EDS Defiant can reach Proxima in 3 days if needed." Susan turned back to the display. The EDS Defiant was Earth's first true warship, hidden in the shadow of Jupiter for the past 5 years. Nobody in the Galactic Council knew it existed. "I hope we're not too clever for our own good," she said. "The Council thinks we're afraid of a fight. The Muldarians think we're easy targets. We might have to correct both impressions very soon." A junior officer entered the room and saluted. "Admiral, General, we just received an emergency transmission from Proxima. The Muldarians have landed troops at the northern settlement. They're calling it a security inspection, but they're armed for war." Susan and Alan looked at each other. The decision point was approaching faster than anyone had expected. "Tell Sam to stand by," Susan said, "and alert the Defiant crew. Things are about to change." The Muldarian ships moved into position around the main human settlement on Proxima Centauri. Their dark hulls reflected little light, making them look like holes in space. Commander Kreznar of the Muldarian Empire stood on his bridge, looking down at the human colony through the viewscreen. Such a primitive settlement, he said to his second-in-command. "I see no defenses at all." "The humans have some security forces," replied Officer Dren. "But our scans show only basic weapons, nothing that could harm our ships." Kresenar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. The Council was right about them. They truly are afraid to fight. On the planet's surface, Dr. William Cooper worked quickly to save what research data he could. The colony's warning system had given them only 30 minutes notice before the Mulderian ships arrived. "Are you getting all the biology samples?" he asked his assistant. "As many as I can, Doctor," she replied. "But we should be heading to the shelter soon." William nodded. 5 more minutes. This research could help us understand. The building shook as something exploded nearby. Dust fell from the ceiling. "That wasn't a warning shot," William said. "They're actually attacking." Across the settlement, similar scenes played out as the colonists realized this wasn't just another show of force. The Mulderians had come to take the planet. Governor Karen Martinez was in the communications center, sending an emergency message to Earth. "This is Proxima Colony calling Earth Command. We are under direct attack. 3 Mulderian battle cruisers and multiple landing craft. They're bombing research facilities and—" She paused as another explosion rocked the building. "They're targeting civilians. We need immediate assistance." The communications officer looked up at her with fear in his eyes. "Message sent, Governor. But even at quantum speeds, help can't reach us for days." Karen nodded grimly. "Then we do what we can to survive until help arrives." Several kilometers away, at the edge of the settlement, Sam Wells and his team watched the Mulderian troops land. Disguised as agricultural specialists, the 20 Special Forces operators had been on Proxima for just 2 days. "This is happening faster than we expected," said Lisa, Sam's second-in-command. "What are our orders?" Sam checked his secure communicator. "Command says to observe only. Do not engage unless colony survival is at risk." "Look at that," said another team member, pointing at the Mulderian troops who were rounding up colonists. "They're not even trying to pretend this is an inspection." Sam watched as a Mulderian soldier struck an elderly colonist who wasn't moving fast enough. His hand tightened on his concealed weapon. "Hold position," he ordered. "We're outnumbered 100 to 1. We need to be smart about this." Back on Earth, the emergency message from Proxima had arrived. In the White House Situation Room, President Diane Foster listened as her advisors debated options. "The EDS Defiant can reach them in 3 days," said Admiral Taylor. "But even our best ship might not be enough against 3 Mulderian cruisers." "What about diplomatic channels?" asked the Secretary of State. General Pierce shook his head. "The Mulderians aren't responding to hails, and the Galactic Council is reviewing the situation, which means they're doing nothing." President Foster stood up. Everyone fell silent. "How many colonists on Proxima?" she asked. 5,237, replied Admiral Taylor. "And how many have died in this attack so far?" "Based on communications we've received, at least 200, including Dr. Cooper and his research team." The president's face hardened. "We've maintained the facade of being peaceful to the point of weakness for strategic reasons, but I will not stand by while our people are slaughtered." She turned to Admiral Taylor. "Deploy the Defiant, and prepare the rest of the fleet." "The rest of the fleet, Madam President?" asked General Pierce. "That would reveal everything we've been building in secret." "Yes," she said firmly. "It's time the galaxy learned the truth about humanity." The EDS Defiant moved through space at speeds that most of the galaxy believed impossible for human technology. Captain George Franklin sat in the command chair, watching his crew prepare for their first real combat mission. "Time to Proxima Centauri?" he asked. Lieutenant Steve Adams looked up from his station. 7 hours, Captain. We're making better time than expected." George nodded. The ship had been built in secret, using technology that Earth had carefully hidden from the Galactic Council. For years, humans had played the role of technological underdogs, while their scientists worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Status of the Thunderbolt weapon systems, George asked. Weapons Officer Daniel Harris tapped his console. All systems green, Captain. Power levels at maximum. We've never fired them outside of testing, but they should work exactly as designed. They'd better, said George. We're about to reveal ourselves to the galaxy in a big way. On the bridge display, an image appeared of Admiral Susan Taylor from Earth Command. Captain Franklin, we've received updated intelligence, she said. The Muldarians have taken control of the main settlement and are moving on the smaller outposts. We've lost contact with Governor Martinez. Our Special Forces team is still operational but in hiding. George leaned forward. Casualties. At least 500 colonists confirmed dead. The Muldarians aren't being careful. Susan's face hardened. Your orders remain the same. Arrive at Proxima. Offer the Muldarians one chance to withdraw. And if they refuse, she paused, show them who humans really are. As the Defiant approached Proxima Centauri, the Muldarian ships detected its arrival. On the lead cruiser, Commander Kreznar was summoned to the bridge. A human ship has entered the system, reported his sensor officer. Just one ship. Kreznar laughed. They sent a single vessel against our 3 cruisers. Their fear must have clouded their judgment. The ship is hailing us, said the communications officer. Put them on screen, ordered Kreznar. Let's hear their surrender terms. The image of Captain George Franklin appeared on the Muldarian view screen. This is Captain Franklin of the Earth Defense Ship Defiant. You are attacking a peaceful human settlement in violation of galactic law. Withdraw your forces immediately, or we will remove them. Kreznar and his officers burst into laughter. With one ship, Kreznar replied, Human, perhaps you don't understand your situation. We have 3 battle cruisers to your 1 vessel. Our scans show you have minimal weapons. What could you possibly do to us? George's expression didn't change. I'll take that as a refusal to withdraw. You have 5 minutes to evacuate your troops from the surface before we open fire. 5 minutes. Kreznar laughed again. We'll destroy your ship in 2. The communication ended, and George turned to his crew. Target all 3 cruisers. Primary weapons only. On the Muldarian lead ship, Kreznar ordered his weapons officer to prepare to fire. Let's end this quickly, he said. The humans need to learn their place. But before the Muldarian ships could fire, something unexpected happened. The human ship's hull began to shift, panels sliding open to reveal weapon ports that hadn't been visible before. What is that? Asked Kreznar, suddenly concerned. His sensor officer looked up in confusion. Energy readings just spiked. Their power output is impossible for human technology. The Defiant fired. 3 beams of intense blue light shot out, each striking a Muldarian cruiser. The supposedly powerful shields of the alien vessels failed instantly. The beams cut through the hulls like they weren't there. Evasive action, shouted Kreznar, but it was too late. His ship shuddered as systems failed throughout the vessel. The other 2 cruisers were in even worse shape, one breaking apart and the other drifting without power. On the Defiant, Lieutenant Patricia Johnson looked up from her console. All 3 targets hit, Captain. 2 disabled, 1 destroyed. Minimal survivors from the destroyed vessel, but life support is functioning on the other 2. George nodded. Send to Earth Command. First engagement successful. Thunderbolt weapons performed beyond expectations. Muldarian threat neutralized. He stood up. Now, let's get our people off that planet. News of the human victory at Proxima Centauri spread quickly through the galaxy. In the halls of the Galactic Council, representatives gathered in shocked groups, discussing what this meant. Ambassador John Miller walked through these groups with his head held high, no longer ignored as he passed. Is it true? Asked the Tyrillian representative, her feathered crest rising in excitement. 1 human ship destroyed 3 Muldarian cruisers. John simply nodded and continued walking toward the council chamber. Inside, the room was already full. Representative Zorthak of the Xarians looked uncomfortable as John took his seat. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Miller of Earth," said the Grand Speaker, an ancient member of the Eldorian race. John stood. "Thank you, Grand Speaker. I come with a message from Earth's government. The attack on our Proxima Centauri colony has been answered. The Muldarian forces there have been defeated." Murmurs filled the chamber. Zorthak rose to speak. "We have heard impossible stories, Ambassador. Tales of advanced weapons that should be beyond human capability. The Council demands an explanation." John's face remained calm. "For 50 years, we've listened as you called us cowards. You said humans were afraid of fight. The truth is simpler. We weren't afraid. We were patient." Back in Earth's orbit, Admiral Susan Taylor watched as the rest of the fleet emerged from hidden bases on the Moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt. 20 ships, each as powerful as the Defiant, formed up in perfect formation. "All vessels report ready, Admiral," said her communications officer. Susan nodded. "Begin Operation Grim Reminder." The fleet jumped to faster than light speed, heading toward Muldarian space. This was no longer about defense. Earth was taking the fight to the enemy. On the planet Muldar Prime, the High Command was in chaos. General Vexcor pounded his fist on the table. How could this happen? They're humans. They run from conflict. His intelligence officer looked scared. "Sir, we're detecting multiple ships entering our system. They match the one that destroyed our forces at Proxima Centauri." Vexcor's eyes widened. "How many?" 20, sir. And our sensors show they're powering up the same weapons." On the lead ship EDS Avenger, Colonel Richard Thompson prepared his special forces for ground deployment. His team checked their powered armor suits, technology the humans had kept hidden from alien eyes. "Remember your training," Richard told them. "We're not here for revenge. We're here to show strength and secure our colony's safety. Take prisoners when possible." The Avenger's captain spoke over the communication system. "Colonel, the Muldarian Defense Fleet is moving to intercept. 11 ships total." Richard smiled grimly. They still don't understand what they're facing. The battle in space lasted less than 10 minutes. The Muldarian ships, thought to be among the most powerful in the galaxy, couldn't stand against Earth's hidden technology. As Richard's team dropped toward the surface in stealth pods, they watched the last Muldarian cruiser break apart. On Muldar Prime, General Vexcor received a transmission from the Galactic Council. "The humans demand your complete surrender," said the Grand Speaker. "They promise to spare civilian lives if you comply immediately." Vexcor couldn't believe what was happening. Just days ago, humans were considered weak, fearful creatures barely worth noticing in galactic politics. "Tell them we surrender," he said finally. "And send a message to all Council worlds. The humans don't fight like a species afraid of conflict. They fight like a species that knows the true cost of war." As human forces secured key locations on Muldar Prime, Admiral Taylor received a message from President Foster. "Phase 1 complete," the President said. "The galaxy now knows we aren't afraid to fight. Make sure they also learn we know when to stop. Accept their surrender and prepare for Phase 2. Susan smiled. Phase 2 would be even more shocking to the galaxy than Earth's military might. It would show them humanity's capacity for forgiveness and rebuilding, qualities as surprising to the warlike species of the Council as their hidden weapons had been. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from all 37 member species were present, along with observers from 20 non-member worlds. They had gathered for an emergency session to discuss the human situation. The Grand Speaker called the meeting to order. "Today we face an unprecedented situation. The humans, a species we believe to be timid and technologically limited, have defeated the Muldarian Empire in just 7 days." Representative Zorthak stood. The Xarian looked tired and worried. "We must acknowledge our error in judgment. We said humans were afraid of fight. We were wrong, dangerously wrong." Ambassador John Miller sat quietly, waiting his turn to speak. Beside him was Science Director Laura Martinez, who had brought data files to share with the Council. The Council recognizes Ambassador Miller of Earth, the Grand Speaker announced. John walked to the center of the chamber. Thank you, Grand Speaker. I bring a message from Earth's government. The conflict with the Moldarian Empire is over. They have surrendered unconditionally, and we have accepted that surrender. Murmurs of surprise filled the room. Most species would have continued fighting until their enemy was completely destroyed. Earth requires 3 things from this council, John continued. First, immediate recognition of all human territorial claims, including our colonies. Second, a formal admission that the attack on Proxima Centauri was illegal. Third, Council support for rebuilding efforts on both Proxima Centauri and Mulder Prime. Rebuilding Mulder Prime? Asked a representative from the Vorn Confederacy. You mean to help the very species that attacked you? John nodded. Humans understand the cost of war better than you might think. We choose not to punish the innocent citizens of Mulder Prime for their leader's mistakes. The Grand Speaker, who belonged to the ancient Eldorian race, nodded slowly. The humans show wisdom. My species once made the same mistake as the Muldarians. We underestimated humans thousands of years ago when we visited their world. We thought them primitive and simple. We were wrong then, just as the Council was wrong now. This revelation caused even more surprise among the gathered representatives. John stepped aside, allowing Laura Martinez to speak. She activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. This is Earth, she said, showing their blue planet. What you may not realize is that humans evolved on what many of your species would consider a death world. The display changed to show Earth's history, predators, natural disasters, and the harsh conditions that had shaped humanity. Humans are persistence predators, Laura explained. Our ancestors would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We evolved to endure pain, to adapt to almost any environment, and to never give up. She showed images of human conflicts throughout history. We weren't afraid to fight, she said. We were afraid of what fighting does to everyone involved. Our history is filled with war, and we learned its terrible cost. That's why we sought peaceful solutions first. The representatives watched in silence as they began to understand the species they had so badly misjudged. After the presentation, the Council voted unanimously to accept Earth's terms. As the session ended, many representatives approached John to open direct diplomatic channels with Earth. The Vorax representative, a large insectoid being known for aggressive expansion, watched from a distance. The Vorax had been planning to test human defenses next, believing the cowardly species would be easy to conquer. Now those plans were quickly being revised. Back on Earth, President Foster received the news from the Council with satisfaction. She turned to Admiral Taylor and General Pierce. Phase 2 begins tomorrow, she said. Captain Franklin will lead the humanitarian mission to Mulder Prime. We'll show the galaxy that humans are as skilled at rebuilding as we are at fighting. And what about the Vorax? Asked General Pierce. Intelligence suggests they're next in line to challenge us. President Foster smiled. Let them come observe our rebuilding efforts. I think they'll find it very educational to see what humans are truly capable of. 1 month after the surrender of the Moldarian Empire, the galaxy was still adjusting to the new reality. The humans, once dismissed as fearful and weak, were now recognized as one of the most powerful forces in known space. Captain Elizabeth Bennett stood on the bridge of the EDS Mercy, looking at the view screen. Unlike the warships that had so quickly defeated the Moldarians, the Mercy was a humanitarian vessel. It carried doctors, engineers, and supplies to help rebuild Mulder Prime. Captain, we have visitors, said her first officer, Jim Green. A Vorax ship is requesting permission to observe our work. Elizabeth nodded. Grant permission. President Foster wants the Vorax to see exactly what we're doing here. The Vorax Collective had been next on the list of aggressive species likely to challenge human territories. Their insectoid ships were known throughout the galaxy as harbingers of conquest. But after seeing what happened to the Moldarians, The Vorax leaders had become cautious. On the surface of Moldar Prime, human teams worked alongside Moldarian civilians to rebuild cities damaged in the brief war. Dr. Peter Young supervised a medical center where both humans and Moldarians received care. "Your methods are unusual," said Tralvik, a Moldarian health official. "Your people help everyone, even those who fought against you." Peter nodded as he treated a young Moldarian's injured arm. "That's how we do things. Civilians shouldn't suffer for their leaders' decisions." Tralvik watched in confusion. In Moldarian culture, the strong dominated the weak. Showing kindness to former enemies was strange and new to them. In orbit above the planet, the Vorax observer ship studied the human efforts with great interest. Commander Skurith of the Vorax watched the feeds from the surface with his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "They rebuild what they destroyed," he said to his intelligence officer. "Why waste resources on a defeated enemy?" "Perhaps it is a form of control we do not understand," suggested the officer, "or a strange human ritual." Skurith wasn't convinced. The humans were doing something that didn't make sense in the traditional galactic understanding of power. Back on Earth, Commander Jack Russell addressed the global parliament about the Galactic Council's new proposal. "The Council has suggested that Earth take a leadership role in peacekeeping operations throughout the galaxy," he explained. "They want us to become the enforcement arm of galactic law." Parliament members murmured among themselves. It was a dramatic shift from being dismissed as cowards to being asked to police the galaxy. "I recommend caution," Jack continued. "Becoming the galaxy's police force carries great responsibility and risk. We revealed our military strength to protect ourselves, not to dominate others." President Foster listened carefully. "Commander Russell makes a valid point. We should proceed carefully. I propose we accept a limited peacekeeping role, focused on protecting developing species from exploitation." The vote was nearly unanimous in favor of the limited role. Humans had no desire to become the very thing they had feared, conquerors who used their strength to control others. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador John Miller delivered Earth's response to the Council's proposal. "Earth will participate in peacekeeping, but only under strict conditions," he explained. "We will protect the vulnerable and maintain peace, but we will not become an empire." Representative Zorthak of the Xarians, once dismissive of humans, now showed respect as he addressed John. "Your species continues to surprise us, Ambassador. You have the power to dominate, yet you choose restraint. Perhaps humans weren't afraid of fighting after all. Perhaps you simply understood its consequences better than the rest of us." As John left the council chamber, he received a message from Captain Elizabeth Bennett. The Vorax Collective had just opened formal diplomatic channels with Earth, seeking a non-aggression pact and trade agreements. The species that had planned to test human defenses now sought to become allies. The galaxy was changing, and humanity's revelation of both strength and compassion was at the center of that change. 6 months after the Moldarian conflict, Earth hosted representatives from 50 alien civilizations. The gathering was the largest diplomatic event in human history. The Grand Hall of the United Earth headquarters in Geneva was filled with beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors. Cultural Exchange Director Nancy White watched nervously as the guests explored the exhibits her team had prepared. The displays showed humanity's history, art, science, and military achievements side by side. "They seem confused by our art section," said Nancy to her assistant. "It's the contrast," he replied. "They just came from the military history exhibit. They don't understand how the same species that created such beautiful music also developed such effective weapons." A group of Tyrillian diplomats with bright feathered crests stood before a display showing Earth's many wars, followed by peace treaties and rebuilding efforts. "Your species is puzzling," said the lead Tyrillian to Nancy as she approached. "You fight with great skill, yet you work harder to avoid fighting than most species we know." Nancy smiled. "That's because we know what fighting costs, not just in lives lost, but in what it does to the survivors." In another section of the hall, Dr. Henry Campbell led a group of alien dignitaries through the human psychology exhibit. The visitors seemed especially interested in Earth's theories of conflict resolution. "You evolved as hunters on a dangerous world," said an Eldorian representative, his ancient eyes studying Henry carefully. "Yet you developed empathy for your prey and eventually for your enemies. Most predator species never make this evolutionary jump." Henry nodded. "Human history is filled with violence, but also with people who work to end violence. We learned over thousands of years that strength without compassion leads to destruction." Across the room, Ambassador John Miller spoke with representatives from the Vorax Collective. Once potential enemies, the insectoid species now sought to understand humans better. "Your ships could have destroyed our worlds," said Commander Skurith. "Instead, you offered trade agreements. This is not the behavior we expected from a powerful species." John smiled. "Destroying your worlds would have been easy, but what would we gain? Dead planets. New enemies. Humans prefer living partners to defeated foes." Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council station, a debate was underway about humanity's growing influence. Some species worried that humans were becoming too powerful too quickly. "They hide their true capabilities," warned a Dravian representative. "Who knows what other technologies they have concealed?" Representative Zorthak, once dismissive of humans, but now one of their strongest supporters in the council, replied firmly. "They concealed their strength because we gave them no choice. We judged them as weak because they preferred peace. That was our mistake, not their deception." Back on Earth, as the evening reception began, President Foster addressed the gathered representatives. The room fell silent as she spoke. "For 50 years, we lived among you as a minor species. You called us afraid because we didn't rush to fight. The truth is simpler. We weren't afraid of your weapons. We were afraid of becoming what we once were." She activated a display showing Earth's ancient wars, the destruction humans had caused to their own planet and people. "We fought ourselves for thousands of years. We nearly destroyed our world several times. When we met other species, we chose a different path, to learn, to trade, to grow together rather than conquer." The alien representatives watched in silence, many understanding humans for the first time. In a quiet corner of the reception, a young Muldarian diplomat approached Dr. Peter Young, who had helped treat the wounded on Muldar Prime. "My child lives because of your medical team," said the diplomat. "I once believed humans were weak. I was taught that compassion was a flaw. Now I understand it is your greatest strength." As the night continued, the representatives of 50 worlds began to see humanity in a new light, not as the cowards they had once believed, but as warriors who had learned when not to fight, and why that choice required the greatest courage of all. 1 year after the Muldarian conflict, the galaxy was a changed place. The old Galactic Council had been reformed into a new Galactic Assembly, with Earth holding a prominent position. The grand chamber of the new assembly station orbited a neutral star, designed to represent the new era of cooperation. Ambassador John Miller, now serving as the first human High Counselor, prepared to address the inaugural session. As he waited for his introduction, he thought about the journey that had brought humanity to this point. From being dismissed as cowards to becoming one of the most respected species in known space, all because of a misunderstanding about what it meant to be truly strong. "The Assembly recognizes High Counselor Miller of Earth," announced the speaker, an Eldorian whose voice carried easily through the large chamber. John walked to the center platform, looking out at the representatives of more than 100 species. Many faces were familiar now, allies and partners in the new galactic order. Some had once been enemies or doubters. All now listened when humans spoke. 1 year ago, a single phrase echoed through the halls of the old council. John began, "Humans are afraid of fight." That phrase led to a conflict none of us wanted, but perhaps all of us needed. The chamber was silent as he continued. "The Muldarian Empire believed this phrase and attacked our colonies. They learned quickly that humans were not afraid of fighting. What they didn't understand What most species didn't understand was that we feared something else entirely. John activated a holographic display showing Earth's long history of warfare, followed by images of peace and rebuilding. Humans never feared fighting. We feared what we become when we fight. We feared losing the better parts of ourselves to violence. The galaxy mistook our restraint for weakness, but now understands it as our greatest strength. From their seats near the front, General Vexcor of the reformed Muldarian Republic and Commander Skrith of the Vorax Collective watched attentively. Once potential enemies, they were now among Earth's strongest supporters in galactic politics. The new Galactic Assembly is built on principles humans have long understood, John continued. That true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to preserve, not in domination, but in cooperation. In orbit around Earth, Admiral Susan Taylor and Captain George Franklin stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Academy. Below them, young officers from 20 species trained together, learning from human instructors and teaching humans their own skills in return. "Did you ever think we'd see this day?" asked George. "Alien cadets training alongside humans." Susan shook her head. "I thought we'd either stay hidden forever or end up fighting the whole galaxy. I never imagined this middle path." Back in the assembly chamber, John was concluding his address. "1 year ago, a phrase almost led to our destruction. Today, I offer a new phrase for the assembly to remember. True courage is knowing when not to fight, and why." As he finished speaking, the chamber, once filled with species that had mocked humanity, stood in respectful silence. Even Representative Zorthak, who had once led the dismissal of humans as cowards, stood with the others, finally understanding the species he had so dangerously underestimated. On Earth, in the rebuilt colony of Proxima Centauri, Governor Karen Martinez looked up at the night sky. A memorial to those lost in the Muldarian attack stood in the center of the settlement. But around it, the colony thrived. Human children played alongside the children of 5 alien species whose families had chosen to settle there. A small Muldarian child approached Karen. "Teacher says humans could have destroyed our whole species, but you chose not to. Why?" Karen smiled gently. "Because that's not who we want to be. We can fight when we must, but we'd rather build than destroy." The child considered this, then nodded. "I think I understand now. Humans aren't afraid of fight. You're just not afraid of peace either." Karen laughed. "That might be the best way anyone has ever described us." As night fell across human worlds and new alien allies, the galaxy continued its transformation, all because someone had finally understood what humanity had known all along, that choosing peace when you have the power for war isn't cowardice. It's the hardest kind of courage there is.